Hello and welcome back to the ministry. We're here for part 8 of Now You See Me. I am going to review the last segment I did in the previous video because I wasn't able to finish it, and I should be able to finish it in this video. So it was at the point when Danny was being questioned by the cop. Danny was being questioned, and he was telling the cop, he recited this mantra, and it is an exact way that God feels towards his enemies. And I'm going to explain it in that format. So Danny says, "Let me warn you. God has sent out a warning message to these people in these places of high power and positions. He's already warned them. He's already given them wisdom. He's already given them understanding. He's given them multiple chances to get themselves right and get themselves together. Some made the decision to do so, but those that did had to go into a level of hiding that was a level of ridiculousness, to be honest with you. And they had to literally go underground. You could not be seen. They could not be in that presence or that positioning. And the ones that chose not to, they're out here still thinking that they got any level of control. But God is preparing to humble them because he's already given them the warning. Next line, I want you to follow. Remember when I did the word on the MacGyver episode? It was a 10-part, it's a wrap. I said in that particular word that, it wasn't 10 parts, I think it was 6. But in that, I said that I referred to the scene in the movie Taken when the daughter was taken. It was 3 steps. Remember our 3 steps? I am going to instruct you, position you, then I'm going to take it back. This is what God is saying in this moment. He has instructed them. They thought they were doing what they thought they were doing for their own benefit and gain, and God had instructed them. He will instruct the devil to snatch stuff from you because of the fact that when he's ready, he gonna take it back. He will let them think they got away with something. It's like when Pharaoh was allowed the ability to follow the Israelites into the Red Sea, not coming to the realization that Red Sea was going to close back in. The enemy has been tracked. God knows. And he's been following them. And they Red Sea is about to consume them. For real. Because no matter what you think, they can think that they have a level of control. They can think they set this world up perfectly. They can think that everything is coming straightly to them and all things are going to line up the way in which they desire. But no matter what they think, no matter all the things that they may know, have come into contact with, went to their soothsayers, to their magicians, to their magical people, to the people that they had set up stuff, to the people that they had do this, to the people they had do that, the people that they had thinking that they got ahead of it and they are full control of this situation. They will always be 1 step, 3 steps, 7 steps behind God's desired plan. Because God will always be ahead of them because he's the master manipulator and the God that is in control. The government sits on whose shoulders? Jesus Christ. So if the government sits on his shoulders, you think he ain't in control of it? God who? Elroy. God that sees. You think he ain't watching what they doing? And he is far ahead of their plans. He is the God that made fear. All the enemy's fear is false evidence appearing real. But God is the one that makes fear tremble. Think about that. Next line. And when you think you caught up, when they think they got it together, when they think that it's in order, when they think that it's right the way that it's supposed to be, that's when God and his people are going to be right behind them. God and his angel armies. Remember Elisha when he showed his servant the armies and the chariots of fire that were behind him and around them? That's when he gonna show them, oh, I had you trapped the whole time. And at no time will the enemy be, meaning I don't care if you're in the government, social status, celebrity status, iconic status, whatever status it is, I don't care. God is going to be the one that's in control, no matter at any time. They will be exactly where God wants them because God is in control of this picture. Okay? So they can get close as they think they are. They can use a microscope, magnifying glass, have their magi, magicians, soothsayers, chakra tappers, all they people look real close thinking they got and understand they can read the Bible and try to read it backwards and forwards to try to figure out what God is doing. But guess what? Come closer. Get as close as you can to what God, you think that God is doing. Because the closer that these people get, the less they will actually truly know, because God had already previously set that up and positioned it. And he about to have his take back. I recently saw a video entitled by Stephanie P. Unknowingly but willingly being used. God is in a place right now where he is positioning himself in such a way that when he reveals himself to do what it is that he needs to do, that when he does it, let me tell you this, okay? The enemy think that he's in control, but God is allowing them to unknowingly position themselves exactly where he wants them because they are willingly doing it because of the simplest of facts. Their greed, their pride, their ego, and their desire to one-up God, God knows exactly how to trap them in their own game. You ever seen that movie? It was called, it was Vivica Fox was in it. Two Can Play That Game was the name of the movie. That's what God's doing to them. God knows how to play this game because he created them. He knows exactly what their buttons are. He knows exactly what it is. And he knows exactly who to position and how to position them. He knows the enemy's flavor. He knows their enemy's taste. He will position the people there and turn their hearts toward them in order to gain the information that they think that they're going to get. Only to turn around and turn it in the opposite scenario and direction at the last minute, because the very people that they had their ear on is thereby going to be the ones that are going to betray them at the last minute. And it's not the fact that they knew what they were doing. No. They never knew what they were doing. It's just that God was in control to the degree that he can turn a man's heart towards you and turn a man's heart against you. And you think that he can't do that with your enemies. They only become your enemies because God turned their heart against you in the first place. And they only become your friends because God turned their heart towards you in that season. He can do the same thing with them and their enemies. You get it? I hope you got it. Oh, okay. So the cop then slams his fist on the table, and the man was chained to the table. Let me explain something to you. You have been bound. You have been chained. I saw the number 334. 334 means a person has been bound and shut up. Follow me. Are you following me? He was chained to the table. But the second that the cop took his hands and slammed them down on the table, the man used his magics to switch the cuffs from him to the other person. God is taking the chains off of you and binding your enemies. Your enemies will now be bound. The people that thought they had authority over you are now going to be bound within their own set of cuffs and chains. The very chains that they were binding you with will now be the chains that bind them. Hear me what I'm saying. I hope you hear me what I'm saying. There's a prayer that I have always prayed, and I'm going to tell it to you right now. Follow me. I say, Isaiah 10 and 27, let the yoke become so slippery that was on my neck that it slips off. Then I take that yoke, put my foot on my enemy's neck as Jesus put his foot on his enemy's neck. Take the yoke that I took off of my neck and I put it on my enemy's neck. And then I bring him forth before the courts of heaven for the Lord, the just judge, to decide his sentence as according to Acts 18, I believe it is. It's either 16 or 18. That states they are brought before the judgment seat and beaten. I'm going to leave that right there. So when it switches to the cop's arm, the woman had been sitting there, and while they were interrogating him, Danny had said to the guy, you want to keep that soda. It was a soda that had yet to have been opened. The key to the cuffs he had put in there. God is going to use unusual objects and position certain things before you that they look like they are inanimate and of unuse to you. But it says in Judges 15:19, resources will come from unknown places. The key to the chains was in the can. Some of you, the key to your breakthrough is in a place that looks like it wouldn't be there. Danny grabbed the man's phone because when she opened the can, she poured it on the table. When she poured it on the table, he grabbed the phone. Let me make sure this doesn't get wet. But you're going to find out what happened later if you've never seen this movie. A phone is a source of communication. And Danny now had it in his hand. God is controlling all forms of communication, when and how they come and who they come through. He will allow it to open up and He will allow it to close. He will allow the communication to happen and He will allow it to not happen. Some of y'all been wondering why certain forms of communications, opportunities, situations, and scenarios have not come to you yet, because God was in control and He knew when and at what point in time that communication was supposed to come. Sometimes we be thinking that we be blocked, delayed, derailed, and all of this. You are not being blocked by the enemy. God allowed that until the time frame that He knew that He was going to allow you to receive it. Because it was specific to His time frame, and His plan being executed. Nothing could come a moment before and nothing could come a moment after. So the woman pours out the Coke can and he grabbed the phone. Then he said, "Oh, here," and he hands him the phone back. And just as Danny had requested and stated, they had to be let go. When God has positioned you, you may even get to a point where they pull you in. They may try to arrest you. They may try to persecute you. They may try to cause all this confusion to happen to you, around you, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, if God is in control of this thing, they gonna have to let you go. It don't matter. Because all of that was false evidence appearing real. They were trying to do that to spook them in hopes that they would talk. But they didn't. If you stand, as it states in Exodus, I believe it's Exodus 14:14 or Exodus 13:14. If you stand still, you shall see the salvation of the Lord. Stand still, and He's going to keep you in those moments when they try to pin you down, thinking that they're going to be able to stop you. Know that God will be in control in those moments. So the cop is on the steps later playing. The cop was played by Common, and there was two other cops that were standing there, and he says that they went to find Thaddeus Bradley. Thaddeus Bradley is played by Morgan Freeman, who is a magician debunker. He debunks magicians' tricks, and they need to go and meet him. He was an ex-magician that debunks all of their tricks. So when they get to his office and sit down with him, he pulls a trick of making it look like he turned water into wine. And we're just going to leave that there. You know what that is. He talks about how 20 years ago, prior to him debunking tricks, he was debunking a magician's trick for his credibility. And that same musician, why do I keep saying musician? Anyway, that same magician's trick, for the credibility of it, he tried to do Houdini's greatest trick and escape a trunk. Well, no, he wanted to escape a safe. And he ended up trapped and died in the river. When the cop makes a joke in relation to Jesus and the wine. He was like, "Oh, is that how Jesus did it?" So there are Jesus references in this movie. Anyway, they take him to the scene of the crime, which was the performance stage. And he says he won't tell them how he did it. They were like, oh, if you don't, we're going to bring you in on charges as being a conspiracy and obstruction of charges. So he said, okay, so he sat down and he showed them how it was done. He put the helmet on the guy. He dropped him into the room that was actually below the stage. And he met him down there and showed them how they stole the money. The money had to have been stolen just prior, meaning within 24 hours of the show. Then it was put, a set of false bills was put in there that duplicated, looked identical to the bills that were there, and was put in the original safe. Okay. Then, when the trick occurred that they dropped the man down in the room below, the money was actually in there, but in all actuality, I believe it was two sets of money. It was the money that was in the room, and then it was the money that was blown through the Coliseum. But the money was real. The money that was in the room that was sucked out may not have been the real bills. It may have been fake bills in the room below because they just sucked it out of the room. But the bills that came down may have been actual real bills in the Coliseum. And they were sitting up there like, well, how did it disappear in France then? It's like, look, one, they did the element of, they put false money in the truck that during its transport. Then it went to the bank as it was supposed to do. They hypnotized the driver and all this kind of stuff, and then got the money and switched it out. Then put it back as if everything was normal. So the truck driver never knew at any point that he wasn't driving the right money. He didn't know he was driving fake money to the bank. And they already had the money. And they were like, well, then how did it disappear? Flash paper. Because the fake money had a flash paper card in there. And as soon as the trick was triggered, the flash paper burnt the money up. Because it was fake bills, it was regular paper that could disintegrate. So it was actually counterfeit money that was disintegrated in that vault. Now, let me explain what just happened. God is in a place right now that the enemy thinks that they're secure. The enemy thinks that they have full and complete control of the banking and the money system. They are trying to take control of your phones, your apps. They are even right now trying to roll out a federal, and this must have been for me to say this in this video because I was just reading a post by somebody I follow, and she wrote a post talking about the fact that a well-known head of a very important green app company with a $sign was killed. And immediately on the same day of his death, the government decides to release an application nearly identical to that application. And now the original app is acting up. Do you know what it is to usurp a person's authority? When you usurp, you steal it. You stole it. In the past 3 years, since we got stuck in this Pandora's box, the government has had a transfer of funds go into their hands, just like the money that was funneled through the vacuum in this film. It was transferred inappropriately, billions, trillions of dollars, through multiple ways where you were forced, though it seemingly looked like you made the decision, but it was a scenario where you made the choice, but you really didn't have a choice as to whether you said no or not. Think about that. Think about that. And this money was taken through a vacuum. Inflation, prices going up, gas going up, all of this. I'm going to tell you, did you go and you watch the video that I did on Father, Son, and Holy Spirit? I believe it's part 2. No, it's probably part 3 or 4, where I talk about the mother figure, which was the aunt. And she was talking about the certain plans that she had, but she was coming from a mentally unstable place. But she talked about the way that things could be controlled, okay? And she named 4 different things, which I believe I named in that video, of how they could transfer and shift finances, money,